This is an introduction to my latest project. It is, as you can see, for a Wren microcomputer. These were made in very small numbers back in the very early 1980s. From what I can gather, quality was not good, although they are very solidly made. I believe most of them had major issues from the time they were manufactured. It is a Z80 based machine. It's got an inbuilt 7-inch CRT, obviously that's monochrome, 2 floppy drives. Unlike most companies that manufactured small computers at that time, this company did go to the trouble of supplying some fairly comprehensive documentation and also some fairly good software for their machine. This particular machine, I believe, was originally supplied with a version of CP/M. Not many were made. The company manufactured a little over 1,000, but they did leave a legacy of quite a few components for the manufacture of further units. They never got around to manufacturing because they went out of business, and I believe that some of those components were used at a later date to build some more machines. I have this machine in for repair. It doesn't work, doesn't come to life from what I believe. As ever, I'm not going to try and plug it in till I've looked inside, and even more so with this unit, because if you take a sniff at the back, it does smell very strongly of burning, so I think this has had some components fail at some point. It's an interesting way that the machine's been manufactured and designed. The keyboard sits under here, but rather than the keyboard coming out as you would have on most fold-away keyboards, on this machine the whole computer actually slides back. Obviously this needs freeing up a little bit. Like I said, this is an old machine and it needs quite a lot of work, but the whole PC slides back and exposes the keyboard. Quite a nice keyboard. It feels a bit wooden, but there's not much feel to the keys, but it is quite a nice layout, quite a nice size. It is very firm and solid, although it does have a few cracks in the case. Another common problem, a bit like the previous microcomputer I repaired, the plastic cases aren't really very well thought out, and the heavy parts inside do tend to push up against them and break them over time, or when they're dropped. Doesn't take much. So we'll spin it around, have a look at the back. Okay, so on the back we have the carry handle. So if you want to move this around, you push the computer all the way forward to cover the keyboard, and then you can carry it around with this handle, and it also acts as a bump stop when you push the computer back. So at the top we have access for the mains power, the power switch, brightness and contrast controls, and also the mains fuse. As I said, there's a very strong smell of burning coming out through here, so I think there may be an issue with the power supply. And at the bottom we have a modem connection, some paddle controls, so these were a bit like game controllers or even equivalent to mice. RS-232, Winchester drive, printer, a reset button, and what it says here is colour output. I don't know quite what will be coming out of here, whether it's RGB or composite video, I'm not quite sure, and even if it can support colour, we'll look at the documentation later to see exactly what this machine has in terms of video capabilities and video RAM. But the next thing I'll do is open it up, we'll have a look inside and see what we're up against, and then in the future videos in this series I'll look at trying to get it repaired and working again. So I've removed the top cover and the base. We've exposed the main power supply. There's 2 supplies in here. One is the supply and driver for the CRT, generates the high voltage. Not sure why that wire has to be quite this long, but there you go. And then we have the main switching power supply here. Now I posted a few videos a week or so ago about the repair of a Mimi 803, and in that series I repaired the power supply and pointed out that on almost every machine I see there's a common failure, which is the Riva spike suppression capacitors, and sure enough on this machine the horrible smell I detected earlier is coming from exactly the same source. We have failed reliever capacitors, and in fact this power supply looks almost identical to the one used in the MIMI. In fact, I'm pretty sure it's the same model number supply. It's exactly the same layout, same components, exactly the same capacitor has gone short. Same jumpers, although in a slightly different implementation, but it's the same board layout. So not surprisingly, same sort of age, same supply, exactly the same failure. So I'll need to change the capacitors in here. Disk drives don't look too bad. I'll take them out, refurbish them, and what I'll do now is I'll flip the unit upside down and we'll have a look at the main computer PCB. Okay, so looking at the underside of the machine, I can see already we've got a few failures on the PCB itself. I've taken the 3 screws out that hold the rear of the PCB in place. You can now hinge this up to a certain point. I don't really know why they did this, because you can't go beyond this point anyway because of the monitor wires. But you can at least now pop these off, and it will let you hinge the entire board up without disconnecting all the wires, although you can't of course do anything because the monitor's not connected. I'll just reposition the camera. Okay, so quite a complex board. Again, not totally unlike the MIMI 803, although this is obviously far more advanced. This was quite an advanced machine for its age, and I know that there were other machines such as the big IBMs, etc., that were far more advanced than this, but I'm talking about in this particular class this was quite an advanced machine. Again, we have the video RAM, the main system ROM. We have various discrete processors for the bigger functions within the machine, so this uses far more in terms of large-scale integration devices than the MIMI did. You can see here it's got a date 1983, and if we look at the date codes on the ICs, we are in fact, so it seems to average about the 40th week 83, so 83, 84 this was built. Typical of its age in terms of the PCB type. These PCB styles do tend to create problems with failed tracks, and especially through hole plating, so we'll need to check all that. Chances are the battery will need replacing, or you may have an issue with the video memory. Some more memory down here. Actually, this may be the video memory down here, this may be system, but anyway, we'll figure that out later. Doesn't look too bad. So first step is to get the power supply up and running. I'll check all the supplies and then we'll get it hooked up and see if there's any life in the machine, and if not, we'll start fault finding on the main board. So in the next series of videos, hopefully we can get this Wren up and running and fully functional.